Hi, everybody. Welcome to the IC Topic Chats for today. It is, hey, it's 11:11 on May 9th.
11.
Well, it's 11:11 where I am anyway. And funny thing, my daughter, who's 19 now, but when she was probably 13, she started texting me 11:11 at 11:11 o'clock in the morning and sometimes at night. And I was just the weirdest thing. And she actually did that earlier this week. Anyway, I'm sorry. That has nothing to do with our session today. We've got Lauren McClain with us from Grantably, and she had the most unusual experience that I didn't even know happened. But she was on an entrepreneurial reality TV show, and so without too much other ado and description, I'm just going to pass it over to Lauren. A lot of us are just like super excited to hear about this. So take it away, Lauren.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much, Matt, for having me. So yeah, if you would have ever asked me if I would have been on a reality TV show, I would have said absolutely not. I love watching them, but I really never thought about being on one. And then one night, scrolling through Facebook at 11 o'clock at night, as you do, I came across an ad that said entrepreneur with a question mark, and then talked about applying to be on this show called The Blocks. And so I kind of just completely on a whim, looked at it and applied. And so I don't know if any of you are fans of the MTV show The Challenge. Get the chat to see a couple people sitting nodding their head yes. Okay, so I am my husband and I have watched that show religiously for like 20 some years that it's been on. And Wes, who is on the show, the redheaded one, this is his show. So he is not just a reality TV star, he also is an incredible entrepreneur. He has a company called Beta Blocks, which has sort of like 5 components, and the Blocks, which is the reality TV show component, is just one of those 5. He has a portfolio of businesses that he's a part of that's about to hit the $1 billion mark. I mean, he knows what he's doing, and he is sort of an entrepreneurship accelerator. Like a lot of what he does is helping entrepreneurs and startups get going. So once I kind of saw that it was his show, that gave me a little more credibility. And I decided to apply, and I was like, what the heck? I'm never going to hear from these people again. I told my husband the next day what I did, and he was like, you did what? And I'm like, it's okay. I'm not going to hear anything. And then a few days later or a week later, it was like, hey, you got moved on to the next round. And then after that, it was like, hey, you got moved on to the next round. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then I got the call that I made it on the show. When I got there, because that process was fairly smooth, when I got there, I was really shocked to find out that like 8,000 businesses had applied to be on it, and 84 were selected. So that like blew my mind, because I figured like it was so smooth and I got on here. So there probably wasn't that many people that applied, and I was wrong. So that was really cool and just felt like a win, like in and of itself. Some people brought business partners. So there were 84 businesses there, but there was about 100 people there, entrepreneurs in attendance. There were 9 mentor judges, and so those people also get cast. So every season they're a little different, but they have to have businesses that do a minimum of, I think it's 2 million annually in revenue, to be a judge. And some of these people have done way more than that. Like one guy introduced himself. He's on his 3rd business. He sold his first business for like $30 million. So these people really know what they're doing in terms of entrepreneurship, which was just really cool to be around. Like, I don't know anybody who sold a business for $30 million. So anyway, so that was really cool. And then of course, Wes was there. And so if you don't know Wes, this is him. And I was a little, I fangirled a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. When I first met him, I was like, "Oh my God, it's you!" Because I've been watching him on TV for so long. But then by like the end of the week, he was just like a regular person, like anybody else. And so the way the format of the day, each day would go, is that we would all be in this room, a big like auditorium. It was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, at a resort and casino. And so we were in this big, theater kind of room, and we would all sit at these tables for 2 hours and be in a class with Wes. This was for 5 days. And then after lunch, we would get a task, which was usually it was like, you have 15 minutes to come up with a 3-minute pitch to answer these 5 or 6 questions on the topic for the day. And so we would be in smaller groups, about 9 businesses per group, with 1 or 2 judges. Sometimes there was 2. And we would have to give a pitch. So that's what I'm doing here, is I'm giving my pitch. And we would just go in order. And then after everybody went, we would start back at the beginning and we would do a consultation. And so this would be a 15-minute consultation where the judge would ask us questions, but we also had the opportunity to ask them questions. And we're in the room through everybody's consultation. So you're learning from everybody's consultation. So that was like just a really cool experience, because there was a lot of different kinds of businesses there, and we got to learn a question that someone else had, maybe I would never think of, but I got to still hear the answers. So that was kind of a little bit about how our big part of the day went. Now, there was a competition aspect to this. Of course, it's reality TV. The judges had a rubric that we never saw. From what I understand, that was super specific. Like, did they use this word and stuff like that? And so very, very specific. And again, we never saw it. And so we would, when we were doing our pitch and our consultation, we would get scored. And then at the end of the night after dinner, we would have what's called the blocks off. And the blocks off would, they would tell who won each pod, they call them pods, who won each pod for the day. And those people would do a similar but different task, like on the spot, on the stage, and then also get graded and then get ranked. And then they kept up with everyone's scores for the week. And then there was, the winner at the end. I'm a very competitive person, so I'm not going to say the competition didn't matter, but I will say that on the day we got there, they said, this is an experience where everybody feels like they won at the end. And I can honestly say that that is true. Every single person felt like they won just by being there, with just everything that we learned, the relationships that we built, the community that we created. And so, I'm going to get to my main takeaways at the end, but that was like one of the biggest things for me, that this experience was just so freaking cool. Like, it was just to be in a room with that many other entrepreneurs. Like, that's just not an experience that you get very often, and I mean, I know that we have, I don't want to take away from what we do in our topic chats, but being around entrepreneurs that all have different businesses and do different things, like, you just learn so much, because you have people selling. I mean, there was one guy that created a product to kill algae in residential pools without chemicals. There was another woman who had a natural burial service, like preserve. People who built tables, and construction people and real estate people, and just the widest range. And so just being around that energy was just super, super cool. So what we did, I'm not going to get into like a ton. I don't have a ton of time. We learned a lot over the course of these 5 days. And so I'm just going to kind of go through kind of the main topic for each day and like a couple things that I pulled out of it. There's way more than this, and it's way more in depth than this, but just to give you like a sense of the kinds of things that I took away from this. So, and I should also say I was on season 12 of this show. So the other seasons, they're launching season 11 is out right now, and you can go back at the end. There'll be some links for where you can go to watch the show. And it's also really cool that some of the seasons are on Amazon Prime. So there's a possibility that my season will be on Amazon Prime, but they have no control over that. They just send it, and Amazon decides if they want to put it up there. But if you wanted to go back and watch some previous seasons, every season it's like a different 5 topics. There are some that rotate, of course, because they're big topics, but not every season covers the same topics, right? So, because that would be boring. So for us, this was our schedule. So day 1, we talked about niching. And I just liked this sentence because, niching is one of those things that we're kind of like, what, it sometimes can be hard to wrap your head around. why is this so important, and that kind of thing. And I think it really started to click for me why this was important. And I really liked this, kind of analogy. What's the quickest way to make a party feel full? Use a smaller room. So like if you have a smaller focus, then you can see, all the people that are within that focus, or the organizations within that focus, and it can just make everything feel more manageable too, right? Like you don't have to entertain as many people. They talked a lot about like kind of the example of like the Battle of Normandy and like the beachhead strategy of niching. And like the idea there was, right, that you like hone in on, just put all your effort into one beach, right, where they went, and then they conquered that, and then once they did that, they can move on to the next thing. And so that they kind of went from the beachhead strategy to the bowling pin approach, right? So like focus on your niche, who you like, get really good at that one area, and then once you kind of have that down, and you have your systems in place and your templates in place and your process in place, then you can move on to like what's the next bowling pin, right? Like then that's a bowling pin strategy. So you hit that 10 pin, and then what's kind of next, right? So where would you want to expand out after that? And all of this makes your value proposition tighter, makes it easier to bootstrap. So like if you're just putting your resources all in like one area for like marketing purposes and things like that, it's a lot easier to focus and be really efficient. And then again, it helps get those systems established. So those were some things. And I had a really hard time with niching before this, and I feel like I had a lot of things click during that niching day. Day 2 was how to scale using systems. And this was really about adopting a CEO mentality, and taking yourself out of your business. And, when I think about what that means for like us as independent consultants in evaluation, like we are the business a lot of times, right? Like we are the business. And so thinking about how do you take yourself out of that was like that would like stretched me, right? Like I really had to think about what that would look like. And I was challenged by one of the judges to really set aside at least 30 minutes a week, and then build that up to an hour, to 2 hours, to 3 hours, to a day, kind of over time, to work on the business, not in the business. And I always thought working on the business was like the bookkeeping and like the scheduling and, like all those kind of just business management tasks, but I was wrong. Working on the business is really more about creativity and innovation and the ideas of like how you're going to grow, and that kind of thing. And through this day, I really thought a lot about like the need for systems and a playbook. So that was a big part of this day. Having those standard operating procedures and starting to create, even if you're the only one doing it right now, at some point you might want to hire somebody, or you might get sick, or you might need to step away for a little while, to have a baby, or something, take care of a sick parent. And having that playbook where it says like, okay, here's how we do our marketing, here's how we intake new clients, here's the process that we follow for contracting and whatever. If all that's listed out, then someone else could take over that, whether it's temporarily or permanently. And at some point you may want to sell your business, and that is the key to selling your business, is having those standard operating procedures that someone else, that's the value, right? Is that someone else could buy your company and then step into it, and things could just continue, as is. So again, we're not in any, rush to sell our business or anything, but I liked the idea of thinking more broadly about how we could do some of this. And also it got me thinking about what tasks could I outsource, right? Like I find myself during the day doing a lot of things that I could very easily pass off to an assistant. And I've really been starting to think about what that looks like and how to take myself out of some of those things where I can focus on the things that generate us the most money. So having that mindset was a kind of a cool switch. Day 3, we covered storytelling and branding. I talked a lot about the presenter's problem, where like we're the experts and we know what we're talking about. And sometimes the people we're talking to have no idea what we're talking about. They don't know the jargon or the lingo. And they talked about the crocodile brain versus the neocortex. Like your crocodile brain is like that very simplistic, kind of way of thinking, and that just tries to protect you from harm and stuff. And the neocortex being like your, high level processing. And this was a problem for me all week. I am not going to lie. Because when I say evaluation, nobody knows what the hell I'm talking about, right? The heck I'm talking about, sorry. Right. And so all week I was having to explain to people that have never done what we do, what I do. And they kept saying, you need to break it down more. You need to break it down more. But I was like kind of fighting, because I was like, yeah, for you, who's never going to be my client, you don't know what I'm talking about, but my clients know what I'm talking about. Right. So that was like a little kind of a hard space for me to be in, because I was like, but this isn't my problem in communicating with my clients. It's my problem communicating with people who are never going to use my services. But the thing to take away from that is, are there ways that we talk about things that some of our clients may not understand? Like maybe they understand evaluation, but maybe they don't understand a particular technique that you use, or maybe they don't understand a term when you're talking about like a particular type of quantitative analysis or something like that. So it was just a good reminder to kind of meet people where they are and make sure that you're not talking over people, so that people understand what services you can offer them. And I thought that was kind of cool. Branding, storytelling at scale. We talked a lot about branding, which I'm probably not going to go into, because I feel like most people in this room kind of understand that. But that building that brand equity, is about getting in front of our audience as much as we can. One thing that I did like that they said, and I did make a change to our website after this, was about drawing a line in the sand about who you are and who you aren't. And being very clear about that. And so if you have a niche, saying this is who my niche is, this is who I focus on. But I think more than that is also about values, right? So so we got much more clear on our website, like that we, care a lot about equity and being anti-racist and, supporting, women and things like that. So I think sometimes we can maybe be afraid to make those kind of stands and make those statements, but I think that's really important it's part of our brand, because it's part of who we are and being authentically who we are. And then ultimately serving people that, want to work with us because of that. So I think that that's something to take away from that day. Day 4, we talked about social media marketing. So we talked about the difference between demand harvest and demand creation. And so demand harvest is when people already know they have a problem and they're actively seeking a solution. Demand creation is when people don't really know that they have a problem. And we have to kind of show them what the problem is and then ultimately how to solve it. And when I thought about this in terms of, what we do as evaluators, I think it's kind of a mix of both, right? If someone has a federal grant that says you are required to have an external evaluator, then they're in the demand harvest group, right? Because they have a problem, they need an external evaluator, and they're just going to come looking for us. But some of the things that we do might be more of a demand creation, right? Like we also offer kind of an organizational culture assessment and, implementation consulting. And I know a lot of you that offer like coalition building or other types of facilitation. Sometimes people might not realize how they could benefit from those services. And so these two types of demand require different approaches, right? So the demand harvest, you're working more on like SEO stuff on your website, being searchable, having ads that kind of come across people's feeds. In the demand creation, you're sort of offering value and talking about the problem and explaining how you can fix it, which is more of like a social media approach. So on social media, they also talked about value posts versus harvest posts. So, offering value to build that know, like, and trust factor. And then the harvest posts are the sales posts, right? And so you don't want to always be like sales, 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 but you also don't want to just be value, 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 value. At some point, you want people to buy from you, right? So they talk about like kind of the jab, jab, hook, right? Like that you're kind of jabbing with the value post like 80% of the time, but then you also need to come in with the hook to sell about 20% of the time. So they talked about the use of ads. They also talked about the fact that website visitors are not leads, but email addresses are leads. And so that was just sort of an interesting way to think about like, when does someone actually become a lead? So So anyway, that's some stuff that I learned that day that I thought might be helpful to people here. And then the last day was nurturing your leads with technology. And so kind of a continuation. I thought day 4 and 5 went together pretty well. You know, that lead generation is like kind of when people are opting in, like by giving you an email address or joining a Facebook group or doing something like that, signing up for your newsletter. And then lead nurturing is those value kind of post things to kind of keep bringing them in. And then the customer success is once they become a client, everything you do to keep them satisfied, right? To fulfill your end of the bargain, to make sure that you've offered them those services and things like that, that are really, that they're going to be happy with and that they're going to keep coming back, right? And so we also talked that day about, you know, the lifetime value of a client, right? So, you know, you might bring them in for one project, but maybe if you can get other projects from them in the future, or they can refer you to other people, their lifetime value is higher than what that just initial project is. And so by nurturing that and making sure they get the best experience, and you know, kind of bring it back, which you all know, we've talked about this so many times in this forum. So, but we also talked about short form and long form nurturing. So short form is like short Facebook posts and things like that, short emails. Long form is more like podcasts, newsletters, blogs, you know, things that ebooks, you know, things that are a little meatier. And so we just kind of talked that day too about kind of mixing your short form with your long form, so that people are getting a lot of value and learning a lot about you, and can kind of get the answers they need about who you are and what you offer. And then we also talked a lot about automating this stuff. So we talked about ways to, you know, automate social media posts. This is something that I have not, I'll admit I have not yet done this, but you know, there's a lot of tools out there to automate, you know, social media posts so that you're not having to spend a ton of time doing that. So that's on my to-do list to look into, but there are ways to do that. So it feels a lot less daunting. I know for me, it feels daunting. So, but there are more efficient ways. So those were the 5 days. My key takeaways from the week overall were to think like a CEO and not an academic. Um, I feel like, you know, again, that entrepreneurial mindset, I had felt like I had developed it some just in my transition to independent consulting. But I think this week really kind of set it on fire, and really made me think about ways of being more efficient, ways about hiring, you know, ways thinking about hiring people. Like one of the things that you all might have seen, you know, with our name being Grantably, people would ask us all the time, like, oh, do you do research for grants? Do you write grants? And I have no interest in doing that, to be perfectly honest with you. And neither does Angelica, my business partner. That's just not something that I'm super interested in. But a judge said that to me when I'm there. He said, oh, maybe I can hire you because I really have these, you know, these grant proposals that I want to write. And I said, well, actually, we don't do that. We write, you know, we do evaluation. And he said, okay, so get on Upwork, hire a grant writer, and then I'll hire you. And I was like, why did I never think of that before? Because I was kind of terrified about hiring somebody. And so that's what we did. We came home, I got on Upwork, I actually found 2 grant writers I really liked. They're like 1099 kind of, you know, they're not full-time employees. I got on the phone with him. He actually helped kind of mentor me through like what this whole thing should look like. And then he hired us and we bought, you know, he ended up, we wrote 2 grant proposals for him. So it was like, just because I don't know how to do something or want to do something doesn't mean that I can't just hire someone who does, you know? And so I think that it got me thinking more about Grantably as a business and not just Grantably as what Angelica and I are capable of. And so that was like that definitely was like a mentality switch for me. Also just made me dream bigger. Like I don't know very many millionaires. And I met a lot of millionaires. And it's not like, to me, my financial goals coming from academia were like, oh my gosh, could I really make like $200,000? Like, is that absurd? And now I'm like, I want to make $1 million. Like, I want to make $5 million. Like, you know, and it was just kind of like one of those things that it made me just really take the blinders off and think, what are ways that you could do this? Now, I may not just do that from evaluation. Maybe I need multiple streams of income, but it's possible, you know? And so I think I felt bad about having those kinds of financial goals before, coming from that academic mindset, and going here made me realize that that's not unreasonable. And so I think that was just something, like, I literally had a judge say to me, like, with where I was with proposals for the year and stuff, she was like, I think it's completely reasonable that you could hit $1 million this year. And I was just like, really? Like, and it was just, so I don't know, it just made me think bigger. And not that we do everything about the money, but I was underpaid for a long time and I kind of want to make up for it. So, that helps a little bit. It really, like I said earlier, helped me niche, really get kind of, help me think about how to wrap my head around that and why that's so important. It also gave me a really long to-do list, right? Like, there's just so many things that I learned I still haven't processed at all. And I went in January. So I know I'm going to be working through these things for a while. But it's exciting to think about, how to implement all these things that I learned into, making a super successful business. And then honestly, the biggest thing I walked away from was like a lot of really amazing friends and mentors. I actually got a little teary-eyed last night, just like putting all these pictures together, because that experience was one that just like bonded everybody. And like and there was something special about our group, even like the crew was like, there was something special about your season. People just, even though it was a competition, people were super, super supportive and just helping each other. Like I said, I had a hard time with like explaining what I do in a way that people would understand. And somebody at breakfast just walked by me and she goes, oh, I have an idea about how you could do that. Sit down with me. And we just like worked through it. And then I finally got it, And so it was just really cool to have that experience. We all keep in touch. We have quarterly meetings. A few of them and I are meeting weekly to work on the business, like dedicated time to work on the business. The judges have been incredibly helpful. I've had meetings with multiple, like I think 3 or 4 of them since the show, that have just been super supportive. So overall, it really has just been, I cannot say enough about my experience. It was really amazing. And then these are just some final pictures. This was kind of what the room was like at night during the blocks off up here in the corner. If I could find my cursor. I don't know where my cursor went. Over here, this was kind of what it looked like. It was everybody. And then these were the judges for the week. So that was really cool. Throughout the week, people were throwing out resources all the time. So I just kind of made a list here. That book, Virtual Freedom, really helped me think about hiring. Had a lot of really useful, practical information in it. I admit I haven't read all of these yet, but they're there. And then some podcasts that people mentioned. One of the judges, she has The Joyous Path to Millions. This Real Unicorns Don't Wear Pants was actually another contestant on the show, and she's like a high ticket marketing coach. This I wrote down, I don't know why, but I think there's something about that particular episode that was helpful. So if you're interested at all in the blocks, there's some links here that I'm sure we can send out in the email about where to watch it. And then they're always casting. So I think Wes had plans for like 7 seasons this year, or 8 seasons this year. So if this is something that you want to do, you could certainly apply to be on there. Cassie, the casting director, said if people mention, my name or names of people who've been on it, that she kind of just pushes them through a little bit more. So if you decide to apply, put my name on there, say that you heard it from me, and maybe you get little bonus points for that. And then again, I wanted to just acknowledge that, one of the things that I really wanted to do is work, kind of start like a coaching branch of Grantably. And so Angelica and I are offering our free training called 5-Step Roadmap from Academic to Consultant. The Facebook group actually opens tomorrow, and then the training will go kind of all next week with a live event on Monday, May 20th. So if you're new and you are kind of thinking about, if you're just kind of getting started and would like to kind of go through this, that might be great for you. And then if you know other people who are thinking about consulting, we'd certainly love to have them as well. And through the course of this, of course, we're going to be using some of the stuff that we learned from our own experience, but also that we learned from the block. So that is it. So thank you all for having us.
A couple reflections there, Lauren. number one, yes, you can become a millionaire. There's a lot of folks who do this over years and they figure out how to do
Mhm,
it. I don't know if you're going to make $1 million this year, maybe that would be awesome.
mhm. Yeah.
But yeah, that's totally possible. You know, the thing when I was thinking about this beforehand, when I was thinking about um, your experience, and I have a couple more questions too, but like, what are those things that those other people are doing that you're like, oh my God, why am I not doing that? Because because they're, I don't know, in totally different industries and they're serving different kinds of people. And the thing that the reason I asked it is like when I go to the Grant Professionals Association, GPA, there's a whole group of like the independent consultants of grant professionals. You know, they're basically grant writers, and they are so different, but so inspiring because they have to like turn projects really quickly. And we oftentimes have longer term projects. And I feel like I learned so much from those folks. So what is it that you learned from them that you're like, why didn't I think of that before? Obviously, I should be doing,
Mhm,
what is that thing?
mhm. Well, I mean, there's a couple that I think there's like the philosophical thing, and then there's like the practical thing, right? Like the philosophical thing is that they're all those people that are, have these businesses where they're making millions of dollars and are like super successful, like they're no different than me, right? Like, and I think that's the thing that's just like a mindset thing that people need to adopt is like anybody who you look up to who's doing something that you're not doing, like they are no different from you. Like you are totally capable of doing those things. You just have to figure out how to do it, right? And so like a lot of them, they do have like multiple income streams to, get to their financial goals, or they do just charge more because they just value themselves. Like there's a lot of things I think that I learned. And the biggest thing, two big things. One is systems and processes. I feel like when you're starting out in a business, sometimes like you're just overwhelmed by everything going on, like your systems and your processes, like they're kind of an afterthought. At least they have been for us. And so not like we think about them, but then like actually sitting down and like doing it is another story. And so that's something that I think really will help our business in this next year, by doing more of that. But the other thing, I had actually asked one of the coaches, the judges, I said, what if you could pinpoint one thing that you would attribute most of your success to, what would that be? And he said, just doing and not worrying about it sucking. Like, don't be afraid to put something out there that isn't perfect. You'll put it out there, you'll get feedback, you fix it, you get better, and that's going to help move you forward. And I think, especially coming from academia, like a lot of us get stuck in that perfectionism loop. And I think just letting that go and just being okay with not being perfect, and like being accepting of like, I always worry about like my reputation or what people are going to think about me. And like, if I used a year ago, if I made a mistake, I would like be crying in bed for a day, because I would just feel so terrible and like, oh my God, these people are going to judge me. And now I'm just like, I make a mistake, and like it just happened the other day. I made a mistake with our Facebook ad for our coaching thing. And I was like, oh God, that sucks. And then I just fixed it and I moved on. Like, just, I mean, and so I feel like in business, like it really is just about taking action, and it's not going to be perfect. And just imperfect progress is better than perfect procrastination. And so like, that's one of the biggest things that I took away. I know that was like a lot of things, but that was a big thing.
Yeah, I know. I just think it's so amazing how, like I'm only reflecting on the grant professionals, like grant writers,
Mm-hmm.
particularly, like how business focused they are
Mm-hmm.
versus, I mean, I feel like I am, but like I feel like I got nothing on those folks because they have to turn projects so quickly and they're
Mm-hmm.
so intense when they're in it, and then they have to like be
Yeah.
thinking about the next thing. Um, I don't know if I've given you the James Lipton questions in a while, have I? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't think so.
Okay, these are the this is something I like to do to our guest presenters. I have two questions. James Lipton used to do the I think maybe he still does, Inside the Actor Studio, a show on Bravo, and he would interview people like Tom Cruise and all these famous people. And then he'd get to the end and he always asked them the same series of questions. And some of them, and I'm not asking this question, but one of them is, what's your favorite curse word and stuff like that. Well, anyway, I have two questions that I like to ask people. You can answer that question as after we get done recording. But anyway, one of the questions is, thinking about your practice and independent consulting, and I know it's actually pretty recent for you because you haven't been doing this for a while, but if you had to start all over, what are some things that you do differently, or how would you go about doing it? And this is a question for those people who are just like, I'm ready to get started. What do I need to do? But what's the advice to that person who's just getting started with independent consulting right now?
I think one would be what I just said, right? Like, just don't, like, you can get so caught up in like, do I have the perfect logo, and what's my perfect brand colors, and what's this, like getting the website done and all those things. And they're all just forms of procrastination. Like, just do it and just move forward. That would be like my biggest thing. But now that I've been in it for a while, I mean, we started in 2021. I only went full time last summer. So I'm just coming up on a year full time. But it's going to be much harder for me to go back and like organize my stuff better now. And I wish I would have done that better from the beginning. Like, I wish I would have had a better like naming system for files and documents, and like, created templates kind of as I went along. And like, we use monday.com, and I've not been very good about like using that to the best of its ability. And so I wish that I would have set that up a little bit better, because now I'm working in all these client projects and getting new projects and getting the coaching thing going. And I'm like, and I still need to like, go back and do that. And so I wish I would have done that from the beginning. I think having those systems in place can make your life so much easier.
So you look back and say, if only I'd gotten this together back then. Well, you're only a year into it. I was like 9 years into it when I brought
on a virtual assistant. Yes.
Before I brought on my first team member to help me out, and I was like, okay, how do I explain 9 years of what I've been doing to somebody else? Last question. I have two questions. The second question is now a good time to become an independent consultant in program evaluation, and why?
Is now the time? Is that what was?
Is now a good time to do it? Would you recommend it to other people?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, I would. Well, for academics, it's summer, like semester just ended. So let's go. Like, use this time to build your business for yourself. Absolutely. But I mean, I do, from what y'all tell me, there's so much work out there. So like, it's just a matter of making those connections and finding it. And so I think the sooner that, if this is something people are thinking about, I think just do it, dive in and get going, because that's, there's no better time than now. And honestly, it has changed my life. Just being 100% honest. Like, when I was in academia, like, I was in therapy for the last couple of years. I was so depressed. I was like so boring and so serious, and like there was no joy in me. And then like the day I resigned, like it was like the world literally lifted off my shoulders. Like, my kids were like, thought I was crazy. They're like, what is wrong with you? Because I was like dancing around the house and singing and like just being super silly. And they had like not really seen much of that side of me, And so I think like definitely this has been like super impactful. Damn, that made me cry. But seriously, like if this is something you're thinking about doing, like just do it, because even when it's hard and even when you're challenging yourself, like literally expand, like challenging yourself in new ways and like learning new things, there's like no better feeling than that. And then when you create something and you like get a check from somebody that like paid you for something that you created out of thin air, like what is better than that? Like, that's really, really cool. So just do it.
Not much is better than that. Yeah, we had a project that we did last fall, and we just got paid this week for it. and took forever. And it's just administration and bureaucracy. And so we got a cake. We got ice cream cake. In fact, I just ate a piece of that ice
Yeah.
cream cake before the
It's my
session.
favorite.
But I was like, and it's and all we wrote on there was "cut the check"
Yeah.
because it's a reference to
Mhm.
a Marvel character or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm gonna pause there. I have more questions for you that we'll
Sounds
take
good.
offline, but then you can tell me your curse word or whatever you want to do,
Okay,
and
I
then let
will.
everybody else jump in and ask questions. So everybody out there on YouTube
Sounds
land,
good.
see y'all later. Everybody else stick around.